Good afternoon. I am Elisabeth Leonard, the Library Relations Manager at Sage, and I am joined with the most amazing Steph Garrett, who is the lead product manager for Sage Video.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Thank you for joining us. Please do help yourself to coffee and strawberries at any point. Don't feel like you are captives in your chairs. We're going to be talking about Sage Metadata and Sage Video. And we're going to follow that with a little bit of banter between the two of us that takes you live into Sage Video so that you can see what it really does. We'll allow questions at the end, but if you have one that's like burning in your heart and soul that you just don't think that you can hold for 30 minutes.
Yeah, it happens with streaming video.
It can happen,
It can.
And it would actually make us happy if it was that exciting to you that you couldn't hold it at all. So if you're needing to ask your question right away, just raise your hand, and all I'll ask is that you wait till the mic comes to you and then ask your question at that point. So with that, we are going to get going. And my first question for you, Steph, is a big one.
Okay, hit me.
Okay. Why does Sage care about metadata?
Right, okay. So the most obvious answer to this, and there may be some obvious and unobvious answers, is that over the last 6 to 7 years, Sage made a decision to develop products that are served through the libraries and or actually are used by patrons. And so by making that decision, I think that's why we immediately had to start caring about metadata. And so why is that the case? I think the best way, and actually just to show you, so here are some of the digital products we're talking about over the last 6 to 7 years. Sage Video is actually a little bit later in the history of what we've been doing, but there have been Sage research methods. Wait, is that just showing Sage Video right now? There's other products, Sage Research Methods, Dataset, Sage Business Researcher, Sage Business Stats. All of these products rolling out over the last 5 to 6, 7 years. So the question about why we care really gets back to metadata is the gorilla glue of the digital and academic publishing landscape. There's no other way to describe it as other than that. And so what that says to me is that, metadata actually tells, for example, a collection development librarian who's wanting to understand the currency of Sage Video content, exactly when these videos have been published. It tells the exclusivity of the video, it describes everything about it for someone who's trying to make a purchasing decision. Not to mention, it also helps, say, a subject librarian, and I've been told over and over again by subject librarians that the metadata is just, or even more important than the content itself at times, because the metadata is exactly how they're able to go to faculty and explain to them what this product is and what topics are covered within our discipline collection. So being able to know whether there's a tutorial on resilience or cognitive dissonance, which is highly played for obvious reasons, because I think we all suffer from it at times. That's a really easy thing for a subject librarian to have in their back pocket and be able to express and use. So the best way to describe it and sum it up is, in my mind, there are dozens of use cases for content, but the only way to deliver them and actually discover that content is through metadata. So really, metadata just as important as the content delivering things in the digital workflow.
Sage is probably best known for our journals and then following into our book content.
I would agree.
Is metadata different for textual formats than for video?
Yeah, you like hard questions. Great.
I am only about making you work.
Yeah, so there is a really obvious difference here, which is that books and journal articles, in business cases too, when you digitize them, they almost immediately have a full text that you can associate with. So when you digitize a book, a business case, or a journal article, what you're spitting out a lot of time may be a PDF, but technology has gotten to a place where you're also probably getting an HTML or XML or OC, something that makes it searchable almost immediately as a part of the digitization process. The beauty of that is that it's really great for books and journals. You're able to discover the content, and actually what it allows for metadata is that because there is a full text or an XML that's overlaid with this stuff for that content, there are so many semantic tools like Timis, Luxid, Pool Party that can actually extract and organize that metadata better for full text. So that's a really obvious thing that comes out with books and journal articles. Now, that's not the case with video. It's just not. So while voice and really text recognition software have come a really long way, finding the appropriate context in video is actually still really, really difficult for a computer to do. So it's a lot of really human authoring of the metadata. So for example, if we're going to use an example that's not a part of Sage Video, but just video in general, Rocky 2's video file, which I just watched last night on Netflix, because they have all the Rockies on Netflix, so you should watch them. So the Rocky 2 is never going to be able, the video file can't say to you, hey, this is about Apollo Creed coming back for revenge and actually going against Rocky and proving to everyone he can beat them in this match. The video file can't do that for you. So what happens is that human authoring metadata has to happen. The way we do that and the way to bring it back to the books and journal articles and having the full text is in the transcript. And that's really the difference, is that there's a few steps that get you from what we have in books and journal articles, and you have to take that leap with video and making sure there's a transcript first that serves as the full text. And from there, once we have a good transcript, that's the opportunity we have as publishers to actually go in, apply the tools and technology and the human authoring of metadata based off of that full text from the transcript. Does that answer? Did I get there?
I'm going to let you take a deep breath.
Yeah, please. I don't like to breathe very often, though. So
then how do you describe video metadata? That's why I let her take a breath.
So I think I have a lot of descriptions. And actually, I won't show people too much because it'll overwhelm the answer. So I think that video metadata is everything about the video and everything not about the video. I think it's the information about the digital file. So the frame rate, what speed are you actually digitizing this video in? What's the size quality, the bit rates? There's that digital file piece, and that's all metadata about that file. That's not metadata about the content or the subject matter of that streaming video, though. And so the information about the subjects, the topics, the people, the events, what happened in that video and why is it happening at all, that's metadata as well. But there's also another one, and this is the one that I probably lose myself in most readily, and that's the information about how the video is performing. So how is it streaming? How are users actually seeing it? What are buffering rates that are having? Are you seeing the circle all the time when you watch a video? Those metrics and that information about the performance of video is just as important to me as it is, or just as important as the information about the subject matter of the video too. So I think it's generally everything about it and the experience that it's providing. I guess to sum it up though, I think there's another way of slicing this, which is there's operational information and metadata, which is what is it about and what is this digital file? And a lot of times, Elisabeth, I think that's the easier part of video digitization. So you can take a piece of software, dozens of open softwares, even on YouTube, if you upload your video file there, you can see all of this automatic metadata about the file and about maybe where it was even filmed, because that can be captured while you're digitizing it or staking it, or where exactly you were in the frame rate. What it can't tell you are all the other details there, and that gets into human authored metadata. So operational metadata seems to be more computerized and easier to extract, whereas the human authored metadata and all of the benefits that a user or that publishers get out of that, that's the other way of looking at it too.
To my mind, the potential metadata could be quite overwhelming, and you have to then be making a lot of decisions along the way about exactly what is it that you're going to capture, as well as what form will the metadata itself take. So what are the considerations along the way for you?
That's interesting. So when you ask me this, I kind of see 3 or 4 big buckets. And each of these buckets have probably one big question that's written on them. And I think that's how I segment it in my mind. So let's go through some of the buckets, and maybe that'll help describe it a little better. So the first bucket on it has the question, what will make the product actually saleable? So literally, not what makes it great for customers or end users. I mean, if someone does like the product, how does one get that order and how can they access it? That basic information of making it saleable. So the idea of a product code in the metadata that's assigned to each title. The end user may never see it, but that is business metadata that we have to track and administrative data that we have to put in up front before we even put something to the end user. And so there's a lot of considerations that go into that of, well, if someone puts in an order, how exactly is that order fulfilled? What ties each title together across disciplines? How do you define a discipline collection, which on the front end, you see discipline collections of business and management, counseling, psychotherapy, education. But if someone wants any combination of these things, it can get really complicated for a business to be able to fulfill those orders. So I think there are a lot of considerations early days that me and the product development group and the global ops team had to really think through to just sell the thing if we were to create it. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is really how will we make it discoverable to machines and to humans, right? So let's say that someone buys it, or they haven't bought it, or they haven't used it, or don't know about it. How will an end user actually find Sage Video or any of the content in Sage Video? And that really gets into a couple of kind of strange areas. So for humans, what we focus on is really the information architecture. And this idea is that this is the behind the scenes user experience that helps users find the content. So making sure that we do something like providing the right label for page so that you know that you're in the video page. This and things like this, of being able to label the header as an H1 or something like that. These are general labels that we have on the platform that guide our users exactly, of course it hung up right here, that guide our users to exactly where they want to be on the platform.
It's going.
Yeah, it's going. And there's other, sorry, lost my train of thought there. So that's one area that I see is information architecture and being able to label things quite easily so that users know how to navigate throughout the platform. The other one that's really about machines, and that's SEO. So that's getting into search engine optimization, how you've tagged a page, how you actually send the information. So one of the things that happened last week is that someone informed me, and our information architect actually informed me that we hadn't put one code, one tag that says video within the back end of this page. So Google had no idea what the content is. Just that one tag and that one piece of metadata we were missing, and Google hadn't figured out exactly how to index all the content without that one tag. And it was immediately something that we went back and easily corrected, but it's metadata, and it's something that has to be discoverable to a machine like Google's index engines in order to represent it back to us. So the second bucket of discoverability within there. I think the third bucket, if I had to think of one, is that, well, we weren't new to video at Sage when we started Sage Video. Streaming video has been something that librarians have been asking for, buying, acquiring for a few years now. So one of the things I asked myself early on in the development, the consideration was, what did the market do historically? What have users actually wanted from their metadata? What have they liked in other providers? What have they disliked, and how we can meet and marry those needs? So this played out in a couple of ways where I made some decisions to pull back in making the metadata too complex, because I think that metadata is something you can build on over time for the product and for discoverability based off of user feedback and seeing what the market needs and wants at that time. So those are the general buckets. And then there's the last bucket that is a catch-all, which is what will potential customers and users yell at me about if I do really, really poorly? And that usually is a catch-all for everything else that I've missed, which is good. So that's my answer, I think, to that.
I love that your fourth is who's going to be mad at me? What am I going to get yelled for?
Well, it works.
Okay, but that leads me to this, which is, how have you been working with librarians, faculty, students, researchers to make sure that the fourth category of who have I made mad is as empty as possible?
That's funny. Speaking of librarians who have yelled at me in the past.
Okay, so full disclosure, I am a librarian and I have occasionally yelled at her.
About metadata, so that's great. But there's a series of librarians that throughout the development process, and they were development partners, actually provided a lot of information. So development partners early days did an excellent job of telling me how good or bad a MARC record was, or how good or bad the metadata feeds were to discovery vendors, or how good or bad generally they thought the title lists were and what exactly information they would hope to see on a title list. So in that instance, it was really focusing on the purchasers, buyers, or one of the major influencers in the institution and what they're going to need in order to make a decision about it. And they were just so helpful. I would say there's been about, in a year's time, which is a short period of time, a year's time, maybe 4 or 5 versions of title lists that have come out. And a lot of it's evolved, not because they were bad, but because we have different users and we're finding different needs for how they want to use a title list and actually understand and take it to their faculty. So this is an example of one of our types of title lists that we have. And this doesn't even show everything that we can do. And some of them we can go much deeper and show the levels of subject matter covered. So that's how librarians have actually, and then that was the development process. I think when the product was live, they just made a host of suggestions as trialers about exactly what they were seeing and hearing back. And librarians were so, because of our relationships and the good conversations that you and others were having about the product, one of the things we were able to do is librarians felt empowered to tell us what we had gotten wrong. And they felt very clear that you can say that to us because it's early days and it's time to do that so we can clarify the metadata and what we want to do.
Don't leave that page because it's going to bring me to a question, which is this. I'm noticing under video type that there are several different types of videos that are displaying. And I'm also seeing exclusive to Sage. Well, all of those say exclusive, but I'm assuming somewhere down there is something that says non-exclusive.
Yes, at some point it says non-exclusive.
There's
you go.
one.
Yeah. It's not as many as you think.
And we're talking about these things as metadata. What challenges, if any, are there in trying to define these content types or even levels of exclusivity, and why is that necessary?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I'm most proud of with Sage Video is the amount of original content that was produced specifically for this collection. And in a lot of cases, it's anywhere from 65 to 80% of the content is original production. And so I am and will be forever really proud that we're bringing new video to the academic market. The next feeling I have is sheer terror, because what we did is produce original content, and there hasn't been necessarily 1 or 2 models to rely on for each of these content types. So in preparing a video that is raw and observational footage, that is only that. So actually I don't know if it'll play. I don't want to play the sound, but there's no voiceover here with this video. And so all this are preschoolers actually playing in class and toddlers playing throughout it. And so sometimes there are speakers who are speaking to the students, but there's not a lot there. That's one content type that we present. And that's we need to index a lot more deeply for the subjects that are covered in there, because someone isn't going to be able to initially see that when they first come to it. So we had to make that consideration when we were saying raw and observational footage, they probably need to have more subjects or keywords associated with it. We need to make sure that the abstract is really clear on what exactly it's going to do. And there needs to be a good segment so people can navigate into those areas of the platform and actually figure out, have context about where they are. Now, that's original production and one example of that, but say for an in-practice video that has lots of things happening and is showing good examples of exactly what, actually this is another one. There we go. Showing good examples of exactly a tutorial on cognitive behavioral therapy. So this didn't need the same level of detail or the same level of context for a subject. So in this instance, we have a gentleman, Mark Pfeiffer, who is a licensed psychotherapist, and he's actually talking quite a bit about a lot of different subjects in cognitive behavioral therapy. The beauty of this is that he talks a lot, and he talks very specifically and very clearly. So the idea around this and the real importance here is to actually highlight what he's saying and let that show as the major contributor and less about the metadata. So that's original content and the content types. There are different considerations. But one of the other things you mentioned was the exclusivity of content back here. So in this instance, original versus licensed. With original, it was let's get it right and let's get the metadata associated in the way the business needs it, our end users need it, and how customers need to consume it as well for their systems. With licensed content, I would say that the conversation was slightly more nuanced in that when you're licensing from a content provider, they want to make sure that their information that they provided about the abstract and what the video is about and when it was published and all of that background is captured in your product. And so that was less about creating new metadata and more ensuring that the way that they're describing their content works on the platform for the way we're describing it too. So just some trade-offs there throughout that. Yeah. Great.
Stop.
I'm glad it's playing though. Okay.
Are there things that surprised you about metadata and video even to this day?
I think I'm a little surprised that I'm a lot surprised. With the proliferation of YouTube and Vimeo and so many commercial tools around video and academic tools around video, that there really is no magic or silver bullet for metadata creation. It's not drastically better than it was, other than librarians getting more clear about what they want and what they need from video. But as far as like the systems, the tools, the process, I think a lot of that came in an ad hoc fashion, not because necessarily as publishers we wanted it to be ad hoc, but because there weren't solutions robust enough to support the frameworks and workflows that we have to serve our customer base. So I think that's a pretty big surprise there. Yeah.
Okay, so then that said, where do you hope that publishing is going to be going with video and metadata?
With video and metadata. So I think that ultimately, and this is maybe just me who thinks this and feels this way, but I'd love to hear from others if they do too, is that I think there will be a huge mass and metadata will keep growing about video and video formats, that there could be some opportunities for just exploring and surfacing the metadata across video. So that being a product into itself about the information. I know this has been done before where people have indexed the web and put it into databases where you can find the information about the videos, but I think that will proliferate. The other thing I hope to see is that as end users, less the librarians and information scientists, because I think they give a lot to the community in defining the standards, but I think end users will be, I want and hope that they will get more engaged on what they want. So the ability to cite, share, reference a video title all needs metadata. And even to clip it, you're defining the start and end times of that too. And I think that's exactly, I'd love to see more engagement from the end user on exactly what they want and how they want to use it so that other metadata standards can come about out of it.
My last question for you.
Okay.
Can you go down to segment information for me?
I can go down to segment information for you.
And show that off? What's in there?
Yeah, so the segment, actually, let me do this in a slightly different example. Oh, it's fine. So just to be clear, let me build the context of what's in the segment information. For each of the videos in Sage Video, we've taken the time to actually create a segment, and that is not a good example of that, but we've actually taken time to create segments. And so each of these, think of segments as a chapter. Let me mute this. And so for each of these, you can see the segment 1, segment 2. And as publishers, we wanted to make sure that there was ways to navigate into the content easily. And at the very bottom, what we've done for each of those segments that we defined, we actually created metadata for each of the segments so that users are able to navigate to the title, the keywords associated with that one particular segment in an entire video work. And I will, again, turn the sound down. But one of the best things about this is that you can scroll down, and as the video is playing back, you can actually see a mini player, and that way you can explore the metadata in the video as well. While the video is still playing, you can explore more information about it. So that segment info is broken down for each video that we have across each collection.